thanks for tuning in today. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to go over some hip mobility and glute activation exercises that you can do before you start a more lower body intensive leg day. Now this will require bands, so if you don't have this, you can still do some of this stuff in here, but it's definitely going to be way more effective if you have them. This is a thinner band. These bands are from Elite FTS. This is the orange band that they have, and then this is the green one. Some of them are getting a little bit more worn out, so some of this may be less effective with a worn out band. But we're gonna come on down. Now, a lot of times I do this dynamic hip mobility and glute activation in combination with some of the stuff that's in my lower body dynamic movement video. So sometimes I do a combination. I don't do all of this. It just kind of depends on how tight I feel. So I'm going to come on down here, come on down, straight down towards the floor. Bring your right leg in towards that, or inside the band, excuse me. We're going to give some tension on that band. It's going to drop all the way down, almost to the floor, hovering the floor. Both hips stay on the ground, shoulders stay on the ground. This is band activation. Isolated movements here, pulling that leg towards your face a little bit more each rep. You can do about 8, maybe 12 reps here if you need it. Keeping this leg straight. Don't lock out the knee, but you want to keep it straight as possible. Okay, if this is where you go today, that is fine. Now, depending on how tight you feel, some days you might need more reps than others, right? 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm counting by twos here. I'm going to drop it out towards the side, opening up that hip, still keeping both my hips on the floor, and then I'm going to lift it up, pulling it down towards the floor as much as I can, opening up that adductor here. Keep this hip on the floor. So right now, right, the opposite hip is staying down on the floor. We don't want any twisting happening and lifting of the hips. And I'm going to hold this one out here. I'm going to drop it down towards my other leg and then lift it up towards my head. So I'm dropping and then lifting, trying to stay pretty much in the same plane of motion here. So I'm almost parallel with the floor. Now, you may not be, that's totally fine. If you don't feel anything here, that's fine. You can skip this, right? If you don't feel any, some of these exercises, that's fine. Skip them. Holding it, I'm gonna lift it up. This time I'm gonna go for the full circle, lifting straight up, dropping straight down through the middle, lifting straight up, over. I'm going to reverse that direction, go to the outside, down through the middle. And 1, bringing that leg all the way in and extending straight up. Feeling the glute now, stretch, lift. 4, for real this time, 3, 2, and 1. Awesome. So as maybe you could tell, although I'm laying down, but in this video, I am 18 weeks pregnant. This is safe movement for pregnancy. No matter pretty much who you are, you just might need to take it a little bit slower. When you are pregnant, you have relaxin running through your body, which loosens up your ligaments and muscles and tendons even more so than if you obviously aren't pregnant. And so it's much easier to overstretch or pull something, so you just want to make sure that you just take it a little bit slower than maybe you normally would. 1, I'm going to open it up here. This side for me feels a little bit tighter. You're probably always going to have one side that feels tighter than the other. Make sure you're breathing through this too. You're going to feel a deep stretch, and if you are pregnant, you're probably going to feel a very deep stretch. Most likely. If you're a man, typically you hold a lot of tension and your hips aren't as mobile usually as females, so you're probably not going to get as much range of motion Probably, not definitely. I'm gonna go one more here, and then I'm gonna hold it out, do exactly what I did on the other side, bringing that leg down, and then lifting it up towards the head, dropping it towards the feet, lifting it up towards the head, keeping it in that plane of motion here, flexing the foot, and then taking it full all the way in that. It's really about, what, a quarter of a circle, straight up through the middle, out, maybe a semicircle if you're really flexible. Reverse it out towards the side, lifting it up. 2, and 1, bringing it in. Oh, that feels really good right there. Holding it for a second, right? We're still moving through this. We're not holding this statically. At the end of your workout, if you would like, you could repeat these movements, but just hold them for static holds, which just means you would hold this for like 30 seconds. You'd hold this for like 30 seconds, right? So you can still do pretty much all these movements as your cool down. You just want to hold them statically instead of moving dynamically. And 1. Then release. I'm going to come on up. Now, this is where the thicker band's going to come into play. So, now, this isn't going to work for everybody, okay, a thicker band like this. You might actually need one with a little bit less tension, so that way you have a little bit more give. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I'm a pretty small person. I'm only 5 foot tall, so this works for me really well, and I have good flexibility, so I can use a very thick band here. So what I'm going to do, this is where we're really loosening up the hips, kind of resetting the hips, is I'm finding the band right above my hip bone, and I'm kind of locking it in there. Right now my low back is arching. I'm going to squeeze my abdominals, and I'm going to push my low back into the floor, bring those legs up to a tabletop position, and I'm going to move one leg here at a time. Now, there could be too much, if there's too much tension, you feel like you can't move, most likely you need a band with less resistance. And obviously the larger your frame, taller you are, it's going to be a little bit harder to get into this position. You can still do these movements, but it's going to be a little bit more of a core activation exercise here. But right now it's pulling on my hip here. I'm not doing it fast. I'm still definitely feeling my core, right? Still pulling my abdominals into my spine and keeping my back nice and flat. 3, 2, 1. Option, try pulling both legs down, holding it here for a few seconds. You're going to feel that pull on those hips. I like to hold the band a little bit, that way it doesn't slip past my hip bones. Kind of pulling those hips down into place as I pull my abdominals into the floor, getting like that opposite pull and push, pull on your body here, but you're resisting it. Keeping my knees about hip width apart here, they're not together. They're neutral. I'm going to do this until it feels pretty good, which at this point it's getting to that place. And it's pulling a little bit too on the low back, and it's kind of stretching out through that, kind of stretching that spine a little bit here too. And 1. Now, option here. I'm gonna roll over, okay? That'll be the easiest way to get out. Your hips should feel pretty good from that, right? So, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go into some glute activation here that very, this is pretty basic, right? But it's actually pretty hard. So what you're going to do is you're going to start in that same tabletop position. Arms are going to be out towards the side as a T. And we're going to roll, I'm going to roll towards you first, keeping my legs right where they are, okay? I'm going to come on down, squeeze my core, drive this leg into the floor, and lift the hips. And then drop back down and reverse the direction. So what I'm doing is I'm activating my glute by pushing my knee into the ground here. So if any of you are familiar with dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, or DNS, right? It's kind of, this is a basic movement, but if your glutes are inactive, it's going to be very challenging. Push off this hip, squeeze your glutes. You're also gonna feel that side body, right? My shoulders are also in alignment here with my elbow. It's also gonna cause a little bit of shoulder activity going on here and scapula. I'm gonna do one more each side. Squeeze a little bit harder. It's getting harder to do pregnant. And coming down, gonna put our feet on the floor here. Coming into some glute bridges. We're just gonna drive through the heels, squeeze the glute, take it for about a 4 to 5 second hold. Tight core, release. Roll from your glutes to your low back, to the shoulders, hold for 4 to 5 seconds. Squeezing the glutes, feeling the hamstrings, release. Your glutes turn off very easily, especially in our society, right? You sit a lot, most people do most of their jobs, sit in the car. And that causes a lot of hip tightness, hip flexor shortening, and also glute inactivity. So if you're not staying active and working out, or even if you are, you still might have to do these exercises. I'm gonna do one more here, holding it. You have the option here, if you'd like, to isolate, hold one side, release. 3, 2, and 1. Slowly roll, pull the knees into the chest, give yourself a little roll from side to side. And rolling on up, and that's it. So there's other things we could do, but that's a pretty good way to warm up the hips and get some glute activation in. Questions, comments, you can always post below.